Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rickcast Interviews here. I am obviously Rick from Rickcast, and I am grateful and honored to have Joey Olivo, if that's how you say, is that how you say your last name, sir?
Olivo.
Oh, no, I was messing it up. But that's pretty much par for the course for me. Joining me here on the show, and we are going to have a good talk tonight because we've seen a lot of tension post the Trump presidency. We can also understand that it was there pre-Trump presidency, but the election of Trump has really kind of ratcheted up the tension here in the union. And it doesn't matter what state you're in. And it's really nice to have Joey on tonight because we can talk about what Catholics can do, especially Catholic men. Sorry, ladies in the audience, if you are watching, this is going to be a little bit more of a misogynistic warning because it's going to be more pointed towards the men. Of course, women, you always have a place and a role to play within the church, so please don't take that too seriously. But we are going to be talking about how we, as Catholic men, really the protectors of our churches, our individual parishes, what we can do to actually get to protect ourselves. Because as we dive, and of course, people would call me a doomer, Joey, but as I see more and more of the disintegration, especially within MAGA, we're seeing right now with this whole missteps that they're doing, that there's going to be more tension between religious factions and things like that. And I don't think anybody's going to be quote unquote safe during the Trump administration, especially as you have your communists, your Marxists, whatever label you want to ascribe to our opponents on the left, coming towards us and looking at us. So if you'd like, sir, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. So my name is Joey Olivo. I am a native Texan. I have lived in Texas my whole life. My family goes back generations. On my mom's side, our family lineage goes all the way back to the late 1700s. On my dad's side, the mid 1800s. So I always, if anybody ever calls my dad a Mexican, he's like, "No, I'm at Tejano." That's his deal. It's like, I'm not Mexican. I'm at Tejano. My family was born here. My dad was born here. His dad was born here, going all the way back to the generation. So I'm a very proud Texan. And I'll share a funny little story, just a little side tangent, real quick. Is my wife got pregnant when she went up to Washington State after I came back from deployment, and the doctor at the very first appointment we went to, he's like, "Okay, what's the due date?" "Oh, it's June 3rd, and approximately." And I was like, "What's the last possible day that she can fly?" And he was like, "April, whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Just wanted to know that." And he's like, "Why?" I'm like, "My son's not going to be born here. He'll be born in Texas. I just need to know what day I need to buy a ticket for my wife to go back to Texas." And he thought I was joking. My wife was like, "No, he's dead serious." And so I'm a hardcore Texan. Yes, I'm from West Texas originally, so everybody kind of picks up I have a little bit of a Texas twang. You should hear my uncles. My Uncle Martin and my Uncle David have a very thick West Texas twang to them. But I'm a proud Texan, and I am a cradle Catholic. I got confirmed and kind of went off into the weeds on my own there for a while. But in my late 20s, I came back and found tradition, found the Latin Mass, and just really sank my teeth into that and got into safety team stuff, which is a very big, something I'm very passionate about. And that's just a little history on me.
So when we talk about the you came back to the faith, you came back to tradition. How easy was it to get into the idea of safety teams? Because that's become a very hot topic in the last, we'll say, 5 years. So it sounds like you were kind of, trailblazing this course. I mean, my organization, the Armed Papists, only started in 2021. So it sounds like you were ahead of the curve on that. So if you want to explain what drew you to that specific discipline.
Well, when you're in the military and especially in the Navy, we are our ship's firefighters. We are our own port protectors. We have to look over the assets that are on the ship. And so we're all trained. Most people don't think of the Navy maybe in that way, but we are trained in safety stand downs, like, we before we came into like Dubai, Bahrain, post 9/11, I spent a lot of time in those countries, and you always had to do safety briefings on what to do, what not to do, things to look out for, you know, um, just red flags in general. And these things just get ingrained into your head. And I always took those safety stand downs. You'll hear a lot of military guys out there. They'll be like, "Oh, safety stand down." We make fun of it because they do. They get monotonous and they're long and they're tedious, but the information in there is really gold. And so, I had a little bit of a scary incident in my first time in Bahrain. Me and a group of guys I was actually with ended up dying. We got followed by a large group of males from that area. We'll leave it at that. And we got followed all the way back to our hotel, and that was my first, like, wow, this is we are definitely not in Kansas or Texas or the United States for that matter anymore. And so that was kind of an eye opener for me. Obviously, 9/11 was a big eye opener for me, but when you actually go over there and you experience a little bit of hair raising things, it definitely sets your guard up, and it makes you realize, like, hey, there are people that don't like us out there. And so that was kind of I guess the segue into my mindset, especially when I came home. And then after leaving the military, I think just trying to readjust back to civilian life is something I don't think we ever really actually do. I think we learn to live with it, we learn to deal with it, but we don't actually just come back and just, oh, we're back and it's over. Like, no, the hypervigilance stays with you. The all your experiences, everything. Again, I worked on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, so being in the midst of danger, 16, 18 hours a day minimum it's just something I got used to. And I don't think you realize how it affects you until you get out and you come back to the civilian world, and it's just a whole different ball game. And so when I came back to the church, we we kind of bounced around for a while, and then it just so happened one night I saw an advertisement. Have you ever heard of the traditional Latin Mass? And I clicked on it and I saw this black and white, like 1950s video of Latin Mass. And I was like, man, I want to check that out. Well, we get to, fast forward, we get to our current parish here in Dallas. And one of the very first people I met was our head of safety at the time. His name's Tom Bruger. And I was doing a brisket function. Father wanted me to make some briskets for a big gathering, and I did it. And he just happened over here that I was in the Navy, and he was just like, he was like, I need a military guy on my team. And so I ended up joining up with him, and he kind of made me like a second, like a guy underneath him. And so it just kind of came natural. Just getting into the whole safety team thing just kind of came natural, and I applied my knowledge of what I knew from the military, and just different things I learned, hanging around different guys. I had a lot of friends that were Marines and stuff, and just kind of learning from those guys and really just absorbing the conversations around them. And you get to learn how to be more practical, and then of course how to protect. And so I think just a veteran's mindset, even if you've never seen combat, a lot of just if you served in the military, you have a different mindset than the everyday civilian does. And you can learn to really to tailor those things into what I do at my parish, which is organize and plan events, big events, large events. And if you know my parish, it is huge. Yep. Our population has just exploded, and so that's what's really I think that has really worked for me as a veteran. Is like it's just something that just comes natural to me. It's so natural.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things. We can touch on this. We'll use this. We can put a pin on this and talk about it later. I have a good friend that is a Catholic priest, and he goes on mission trips a lot. And he's a big supporter of mine. So naturally, I will not name him. But, he every time he comes back, he goes, Rick, man. People here in the United States, they just don't know how good they have it with the Second Amendment, because when you're in a mission in Africa and you're being walked to the places by guys with AKs there and back, and then you come here and you got people whining about guns, it's like you don't know how good you have it. And that definitely dovetails into what you were talking about. If you've ever been outside of the they look at me strange when I teach my LTC classes. I'm a licensed to carry instructor here in the state of Texas. When I tell them, you've lived in the greatest, safest bubble for the last 60 years, even with the things that happened here, as tragic as they are, it's nothing compared to an average day in 90% of the world. And most of those people do not have a recourse or the ability to actually protect themselves. And I think that's a good place we can jump off. But yes, I went to Modern Day one time when Ryan Grant gave a presentation a couple years ago. I went up to see him, and I have a good friend up there, Sebastian Kranowski.
Yeah.
Yes, decided to go. Give me a second. Sebastian, ironically, just a real quick plug. Sebastian actually did the audiobook for the Armed Papist. He actually did my audiobook for me. So if you guys are big audiobook people and you download the Armed Papist, you'll listen to Sebastian narrate it. And I can't tell you, I can't say enough how great of a job he did. But yeah, I went to Modern Day and I was like, this place is massive. There's a lot of people in this place. So from a security standpoint, it must be a daunting task.
Yeah, especially during Holy Week. I mean, Holy Week is a daunting task. I mean, we are meeting like months in advance, planning things out. This is how we're going. And the good thing is, is the more that we've done it, the easier, I guess, in a kind of way, it has gotten a little easier. And it's also good that the local law enforcement is super supportive of us and what we're doing, and we don't step on their toes, and they kind of let us do our thing. And it's, it does get as you get more organized. Starting out a team is not easy, but once you get the ball rolling, things kind of, you start to get the flow of things. And the guys kind of, as you train them up and you get them used to, okay, this is what our protocols are, this is what we're doing, it just runs really smooth. And at times we're there, but we're not there. We just kind of blend into the background, and we're not trying to be, walking around like, oh, you got to look at me. It's not one of those things. We walk around and we're just vigilant. We're just being vigilant fathers. That's what we're doing.
Yep. So real quick, something that I didn't learn until I actually started doing my LTC courses and teaching them is that there's actually a Texas penal code that you have every right to defend a house of worship in the state of Texas. Mosque, synagogue, strip mall, church, doesn't matter. You can defend it. State of Texas gives you the thumbs up. You actually cannot use the term security in the state of Texas. You cannot. And so if you're thinking about it, if you're in the state of Texas and you want to contact Joey or myself about these types of things, I have a course I do. I've gone to a couple parishes across the Union, one in Florida and a couple other places. And I do, defending houses of worship. At least in the state of Texas, you cannot call yourself security or have, Joey will kind of the LARPers with the kit and everything that they try to look like the security guys with it's actually against the law here in Texas, because for those outside of the state, a little inside baseball, there is a huge, and when I say huge, I mean like Trump, huge security industrial complex here in Texas. You got to pay for level 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So the state in its grand wisdom says, if you want to call yourself the security, you got to pay up to make sure for the privilege of calling yourself a security person. But you can call yourself a volunteer, the Saint Kickers, whatever you want to call yourself. You just can't use that. So I think it's very interesting, because I'm sure you have people, Joey, come up to you and say, well, I'm on my church's security team. And it's like, no, you're not.
You're not.
There is no such thing. Right? Wink. Right. So because I love the fact that you've been doing this for so long, especially because, I'm kind of new in the game, and I love hearing from somebody who's been doing this kind of stuff. So somebody comes, and it doesn't matter, it could be here in Texas or it could be anywhere across the Union. What's the first thing you would advise any group of men when they come and say, Joey, I want to start a volunteer team? First of all, you should call yourself volunteers. That's what I'll say. I want to call myself a volunteer, start a volunteer group at my church. What would be some of the first things that you would recommend?
Talk to your pastor. First and absolute foremost is that. And fortunately for us, back when our safety team got started, it it was something that he wanted, and there was an incident behind it. I can't get into it, but
Obviously. Yeah.
He wanted a team, and Tom put together an outstanding team. And so sitting down with your pastor is going to be number one. Number two is going to be finding the right guys. And that, I think, is actually the hardest part of getting a good team together, is finding the right guys. And for us, we actually have a 2 or 3 step interview process. Like, you have to get past our head of safety, get past me, and then get signed off on by authority higher than us before you can actually join our team. And our interviews are not, they're not like, we're not going to grill you, but we're going to ask you some difficult questions to kind of see what your mindset is, and we don't want, we don't want Leroy Jenkins,
Yep.
on the team.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of man we're looking for. We're looking for even keeled men that are going to have a cool head first and foremost. Somebody who's, in the event of the worst, and I know we're going to kind of maybe focus on worst case scenarios. So I always want to focus on that. On worst case scenario, somebody who's going to be able to stay calm and stay cool, collected, and not just deal with the threat, but deal with the aftermath of the threat, and be able to handle the things that you might see or hear in that situation. So I think that's the hardest part, is finding the right guys, and finding the right guys with the right demeanor to do this.
Okay, there's two. I'm going to branch off. There's two things I want to talk more about. The type of guys, but my follow-up question is, outside of your security team, and you can give me yes, no. I don't want to break any of your kind of stuff. Are you okay with non-members of your team carrying in the church?
So I can't really get into that.
That's why I know it's a weird question to throw out there.
Yeah.
If you want to pass on it, I totally get it, because that's...
Yeah, I'll pass on that, but I can speak on, in general, for other teams that I've actually helped set up.
Yep.
I actually I did a show with Taylor Marshall. I don't know, a couple of years during the COVID thing. COVID, and we did a show on this, and from that show, I actually was able to help set up, I want to say it was around 16 or 17 teams around the United States.
Yep.
And so there are teams that are out there that are totally cool with guys who they want to help, but they don't want to be on an official team, and they're cool with that. Yeah. I have met other teams that are like, nope, either you're on the team or you're not on the team. And I would prefer it that people, be on the team or don't be on the team, because you don't want chaos.
Yep.
If the worst case scenario happens. And because worst case scenario happens, you have people that are doing things, with things that they may be carrying. And I don't know, are you friend or are you foe? I don't know you as a parishioner firsthand, and all of a sudden you're taking action. It's just going to cause confusion amongst the guys that we know are going to respond. And so I would prefer it if I was setting up a team, either you're on the team or you're off the team. That's just a personal preference on mine, though.
Well, see, that's very, and I know some people may have a problem with that, but you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, for those that are stepping up to be the guardians, let's just say they're guardians at this point, right? You're going to be a guardian of the flock. You are taking that extra precaution. You're carrying the power to take life. And those people that sounds like Joey and his team are, you understand that responsibility, that it's there. A lot of people, and I see this with the LTCs I teach and the personal trainings I do, sometimes I have to look at them, Joe, and I say, you realize that you are going to be carrying something that has the power of God to take life on, right? You understand this fact. Okay. When you have to gameplay scenarios, and you have to understand when it's time to take action and when it's time to not. There was actually a very interesting discussion at the range today when I was working, because we see people, and I'm sure you've seen it, that do wackadoo stuff all the time. Now, that's the nicest way I can put it. And, it was actually It was another guy. It wasn't the owner. It was another person who comes to the range often, and he's like, "Do you want me to give you my personal experience with firearms, or do you want me to give you the American answer?" Because the American answer is, yeah, everybody should have access to firearms. It's your right to bear arms and so forth. But my personal experience is, if you're going to get a firearm, you should probably go a couple steps further to understand what it is. And I know when anybody says that in the 2A community, they get absolutely destroyed. Like, oh, you're a commie and you're all these other kinds of stuff. But the fact is, a lot of people will buy a firearm. They'll put it in their bedroom drawer, the right next to their bedroom, their stand, and that'll be the only time they see it. That's the only time they'll ever use it. They don't take it to the range. They don't shoot. They don't even know how to like get the gun into action. Now, Chris from Crash Cannon, we were talking about this very subject a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about safes, and I asked him, "Hey, can you get your gun out of lock and into action in the dark?" He goes, "I absolutely can." And I said, "Good, then you can have your stuff however you want." But people think like gear and just having it grants them this magical John Wick like ability to handle situations. And it's like you realize that your adrenaline is going to dump and that you are going to get tunnel vision. And you sometimes you might not even hear anything because it depends. Some people get different auditory senses. They'll empty 15 rounds out of a gun and never hear one shot. And some people will. So these are the questions people have to understand when they go, which is why I asked that question about it, because I had one of the trainings I did a couple years ago in Florida. I was talking to these guys and they just wanted to kind of have ideas. They didn't really want to form a team. They were kind of comfortable with, we're all here, and if something happens, we'll take action. And I'm always going, what do you mean if something happens? What's the thing that happens? What is the event? Is it one guy? Is it three guys? Is it a protest? What is the thing that will initiate your action, and how far are you going to stop them at the door? Famously enough, remember the New Orleans church a while back, I haven't been a year, where they stopped the guy. I think he got into the front of the church, but not all the way, or he got all the way up, if I'm remembering.
I think he got all the way up. I think I know the event you're talking about.
I'm sorry, folks, I didn't prep, but people are like, great job. And people got mad at me, Joe. And I was like, you actually failed. You guys actually failed, because let's say, okay, he's at the front of the church. It's go time. Everybody pulls out their firearm. You all realize that your families, the priests, the ushers, everybody is now in a shooting gallery. And most of you probably couldn't qualify if I put you on the line right now to shoot. And how you shoot, and I call it punching holes in paper. My gun, Joey, is the greatest hole puncher on the planet right now. I can go to the range, I can put 15 to 50 rounds in, punching that paper. I am golden. I got to do more. I tell people I got to do more training and things like that, situational stuff. And it's fine punching holes in paper. And everyone wants to listen to you, so I'm going to shut up in a second. Everybody, it's fine if you can only punch holes in paper every couple months and stuff like that to keep your gun in gear, but that can't be your lowest level of training. And if you'd like to take off from any of the multitude of things I've just said.
No, that's right. I mean, so yeah, I mean, we've heard all these stories of people stopping people, but most of the stories you see, the people are at the altar before anybody stands up, or even attempts to do anything. These people are already at the altar. And fortunately for us, most of these incidents have just been protests.
Yeah.
Most of these incidents have been protests. I was actually just looking right before he came on, and I looked at the USCCB, and I think it said since 2020 or 2021, there's been 387 attacks on Catholic churches. And now that's not like that includes like vandalism and stuff like that. And it's happened across like 43 out of the 50 states. So that's that should be an eye opener for you, first off. But if you're getting to the altar, you have failed, because again, in that worst case scenario, your pastor or your priest is going to be in the crossfire of whatever's happening. So you have to have a strategy. You have to have guys positioned in certain places. You have guys that are undercover that are, so I know of a parish that, even when guys are not on duty, they still have like their earpieces in. And, that way it's like, hey, do you see somebody suspicious? Hey, just so you know, there's a guy 2 pews behind you, to your left. Yeah, hey, whenever you go for Holy Communion, just kind of keep an eye on him,
Mhm.
and these are just little nuances to it that help prevent them getting past the layers. And I know at our church we have layers. We have our police officer outside, we have our door guys, we have our guys inside the door, we have the guys that are standing, in certain places. And these are all little things that we do, and it's set up in a way that it's effective, it's clear, and we don't have to worry about we shouldn't have to worry about additional people getting involved, because it's just going to complicate things. And that's kind of what you're looking for. I think as a team is you want to have a team that's now here's where I'll say, okay, I understand if people don't want to have a team, because maybe, guess what? Maybe your pastor is not supportive.
Yeah.
And I still think you have a right under God to protect your family. So if you have a pastor who's not supportive, and hey, you feel like you need to protect your family, and there's a few like-minded guys with you, okay, then maybe you come up with a process for that. But there would still have to be some sort of an organization there. But unfortunately for us, though, we have our pastor's super supportive of us, and it's not a big issue for us. But yeah, I mean, you do have to come up with plans. And you're talking about Sebastian. Sebastian is phenomenal, because
Yes.
when we do scenario training, and he'll be one of the people who's taking on a certain scenario. He'd be a bad guy or a mentally deranged guy, and he fully embraces those roles, and he is phenomenal. I've had him in a couple of scenarios.
Not all of us are lucky enough to have a professional actor be
Right.
our scenario guy. Sometimes it's got to be me, and it's like, and I can only commit so hard to the role. Unlike Sebastian, but he is fantastic in all things, and he's a good friend. I'm glad to call him said. And so you talked about having a supportive pastor. It was actually funny. I was in a mass one time, and the priest was giving a homily, and he was an African priest. And he's like, there is never a situation where you ever have to use a gun. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, I might burst into flames in this church right now, considering what I do for my time, because this guy is like not around it. Joey, we actually have a great question here from one of our listeners, Bellators. How do you get around the problem of pastors not wanting anything formal in their parishes?
So, I mean, you're going to have to make a choice.
Yeah.
You're going to have to make an executive decision as a man of whether or not you want to obey that. Personally, for me, I would just find somewhere where my pastor's okay with that sort of a deal. I don't want to be a fish in a barrel. And I will absolutely not allow my family to be fish in a barrel. And I've always said it, and I really love this about my wife and my kids is after every mass, they come out and they always give me a hug and they thank me for, standing. I like to be in the vestibule because I can see outside and everything. Mm-hmm. And they always thank me, and I love that, and I always tell guys, I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, nobody is going to defend my family like I defend my family. And the great hand-in-hand thing to that is that, guess what? For every other family that's there, they're going to get that same defense, because if they're coming after you, they're also coming after my family, and I'm going to take action according to what I need to do that's appropriate for that situation to make sure that they're safe. And ultimately, it's not just our families either. You have to remember, these people are crazy, and they would love nothing more than to get to the priest and take out a priest. We saw that in was it Nice, France? A priest that was stabbed to death. You go back in history, and tabernacle. Even you don't have to go back into history. You go back here just in the recent memory of tabernacles and hosts being stolen and stomped on and desecrated. Ultimately, we are protecting Jesus Christ, and either we believe that He is present in the tabernacle or you don't. And if He is present in the tabernacle, then we have an obligation to defend our God. So it kind of goes back to, you truly believe in the true presence, because if you do, Jesus Christ is present in the tabernacle, and if they can get to that and desecrate it, they absolutely will. And we should be willing to lay down our lives for it. And we've heard stories of priests and lay people running into burning churches just to go get the hosts that are in the tabernacle. We forgot the host. Let's go get it. And they go in and they grab it. So you believe or you don't believe. And I think we have an absolute sacred duty. And I take that duty very serious on Sundays and every the weekdays. And if I go to mass during the weekday, or holy days of obligation, I take that obligation very, very serious.
When I answer questions and I talk to people about these kinds of things and I give suggestions, one of my suggestions is, it sounds like we're very similar. I believe in my theory is the layers of redundancy. And I actually ask people, I'm like, how many of you guys would consider, somebody says, we can't carry guns. You can still defend your church without carrying guns. Now, obviously we would want to do that as a final layer of redundancy or deterrent, whatever you want to use it as. But I asked them, and everybody looks at me shocked when I say this. I go, how many of you guys would sit in your cars in the parking lot monitoring the situation beforehand? And they go, oh, well, Rick, do I have to do it for like my mass or do I have to do it for like another mass? And I go, what is too much to defend our Lord and Savior? That's really my question I've asked, and what if I'm in a blue state, Rick? And what if I'm going to go to jail for that action? And I say, well, if I have to go to jail, the secular jail for defending our Lord and Savior, I think that's a pretty good trade-off for me. So it's really just, what, like you said, do you believe in our Lord and Savior? Do you believe he is the most precious thing on this planet that needs to be protected? Everybody, my good friend Daniel always says, everybody wants to Deus Vult until it's actually time to Deus Vult. So that's really that point there that's brought up. And I want to piggyback, and I think I've said that before. I will try not to use the phrase again. I don't want to be like Jen Psaki and you circle back 30 times, but it's just another great point you're bringing up. I bring this up in the book, which I promise you I'm not shilling anybody, but if you want to take a look at it, most people think the police are there to protect you, but there's actually precedent, and it's called the DeShaney versus Winnebago. There's 2 SCOTUS cases. And this says the 14th Amendment does not require the state, i.e. police, to intervene in protecting residents from actions of private parties that may infringe their life, liberty, and property. So I tell people, the police, despite protect and serve and despite good cops, this is not saying that they won't, but legally, they do not have an obligation to protect you. They really, only thing they have to do, Joey, is come in. All right, what's the paperwork? What's going on here? Where's your statement? Where's your statement? The scene's safe. All right, let's clear it out for the medical guys so they can do their thing and move on. And a lot of
we saw that right here at the school shooting here a few years back in South Texas at Uvalde. Yeah, we saw that exact thing. They just sat down and dillied around for half an hour while the guy's executing people.
Yep, and they were, and I mean, of course, there was obvious outrage. There should be, but legally, they were justified, and it makes me feel sick to even say these words. But when people are like, well, why do the police are here and all these other kinds of things, there are really good cops that will absolutely do what they need to do. But understand, as you've seen in Uvalde, and remember the police officer that walked by the lady that was on fire in New York in the subway, he was just like, that's cool. And he just kind of kept walking. And people like myself will always bang away on X. This is why the cops don't have you need to take your safety seriously. So Bellator, your question, what about, something happens and I can't, this is not an official statement from me as the armed papist, and I'm not speaking for Joey, but there is the phrase that people like to say, rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. That is a popular phrase for a reason, because nobody else, especially if you have kids or if you have a family, you as the male, you are charged with the protection of that family. Okay. God has said, this is your wife, this is your kids, right? You have to do what you have to do to protect them. And that's really kind of that great point. I just want to bring this up, Patrick. I really do thank you for giving me the thumbs up and support there. I'll do my best when I can. But yes, so that's the idea that you cannot outsource your safety. And that's part of this bubble we live in, that
Yes.
people have been taught. And it's kind of the emasculation of the modern American man, that your safety is for the police. Democrats use this line all the time. Only the police and the military have guns. I work at a gun range, ladies and gentlemen. This is not to denigrate them, but there's a lot of police and military that when they tell me that they're police and military and then I take them on the range for their LTC, I'm going, yeah, don't tell anybody that. don't use that as an opening. I won't tell anybody, but you might want to keep that on the down low. But we have this idea that every cop is Jack Bauer, and that every military person is Steven Seagal from Under Siege. That even the cook knows how to fight, and it's just like, no, the men and women who serve in the armed forces, they have a specific role and they do it, and we thank them for doing that stuff. But and that's partially propaganda, every NCIS show, all these other kinds of things, and so it's kind of hard to shake, your average Catholic man out of the idea, like, hey man, you need to do this. You need to sit in the parking lot, or you need to sit in the narthex, or you need to be the one that kind of confronts this person. And I know that it's hard legally now, because even if you confront them, then it's like, oh, I got you on video and you assaulted me and you did all these other kinds of stuff. May I recommend some kind of law and some kind of legal representation, attorneys on retainer, USCCA, something else like that, for those types of situations? I mean, if Joey or myself here in Texas, if we use it, I have USCCA because I'm an instructor. You can comment whether you like that or not. I don't care. You can tell me it's stupid, whatever. But I can call them and they will represent me if I have to use a self-defense incident. And I recommend to all men who carry, it doesn't have to be USCCA, it could be US Law Shield. There's like 7 or 8, or it's like cards. You can find whatever you want. I don't care. You should just have that. What is your thoughts on that kind of idea as a secondary? Because you were talking about, post incident. Do you factor that into post incident kind of stuff?
Like as far as like what they're going to do, like post, like after something big happens.
Yeah, after an incident happens and they've had to defend themselves, it could be just even a physical confrontation. Now, oh well, you assaulted me, even if it's just pushing them back from an altar or something like that. We live in a litigious society, and everybody can slap a lawsuit on you for anything.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I mean, just from what we do, is if we have to talk to anybody, I mean, our first deal is get our police officer involved.
Mm-hmm.
We have a police officer at every one of our Sunday masses, all of our holy days of obligation. We have an on-site police officer in uniform, in a marked unit. So that's always our go-to. Now they're usually outside in a vehicle, so it would take time to get inside, but we work in pairs. So if I need to talk to somebody about something, somebody sees something suspicious, I'm going to have a second person with me there. And I've gotten into a really good habit of turning on my cell phone and popping it in my pocket and recording my interactions. That way there can be no misconceptions, because I did have one guy who's like, oh, this guy accused me of stealing a hose. Like, no. But again, I had a witness there that was like, no, that's not at all what he said. He was asking a general question, and you asked, why would anybody take a host? And he explained to you why some people take a host. Well, then he went and took that, and was like, this guy said I was going to desecrate Jesus in the Eucharist, and I'm not going to be Catholic anymore. It's like, no, that's not at all what happened. So yeah, so we do, we are trained to work in pairs. So if I am going to approach somebody to talk about a specific instance, I'm going to have somebody with me as a witness.
Yep.
And we're also going to do it off a little bit in private, so not to embarrass anybody. Again, it depends on the situation. There's so many different situations, and I'll tell you guys this: having a safety team is not just about that worst case scenario. I've been on the team for 9 years now, and I have dealt with probably 50 old ladies falling. That's like majority of what I have to deal with is people fainting from fasting, old people tripping because they drag their feet as they get older and they hit a crack and they fall.
I drag my feet now. So
yeah, me too. Dehydration. Those are the things, those are the things we typically deal with. And so, yeah, we even have a reporting system. We have incident reports that we turn to the diocese. There's so many different things that you can do to help mitigate that, that responsibility in the event that, somebody wants to file a lawsuit or something like that. But, again, it's just being able to document things really well. And for, like I said, for me, I like having my phone on me, and I will record an interaction just for my own personal protection. And in the event something they were to accuse me of something, well, guess what? I got the whole incident on videotape,
Yep. Yeah, and I hope everybody watching either live or in the replay understands that it may seem like, oh, well, this is everybody, and this is not a negative. It's just how we've been trained. It's like we only think of a security team for the mass casualty incident, and you need the firearm to stop it. Yes, as Joey and I said, that is the worst case scenario that we're all kind of. That's the baseline. But there's always other things like a protester coming in, or the one that I was doing in Florida. I was talking to them about first aid, and one of the guys, an older gentleman, said, "Well, don't worry, man. The fire department's 5 minutes away." I said, "Yeah, but you're not calling the fire department. You realize that?" He goes, "What do you mean? Like you're calling 911? That's going to an operator. Then they're relaying it to the fire department. That's 5 minute away fire. He's 15 minutes at most. What are you going to do with let's say an older woman falls, like we said, and she cut herself, and she's a 77, 78-year-old elderly woman with a nasty gash. Is everybody gonna sit there watching her bleed? Well, hey, don't worry, ma'am. I got the fire department's on the way. No. What are you even trained in basic first aid? You can go to the Red Cross and do a basic first aid kit online in about 10 minutes just to have how to make a tourniquet. Do you realize that if they gash their arm and they put it up, that actually slows bleeding because the blood has to go up? Most people don't even realize simple things like that.
Yep.
And, I guess it's part of the idea, not guess, it's essential that you need to cover multiple aspects. And I'm guessing, and I'm not putting words in Joe's mouth, when you ask, hey, you want to be a part of the security team, they're like, well, I'm ready here in case anything happens. It's like, okay, I don't need you, because if the old lady cuts herself, you're going to stand there and be like, not my problem, ma'am. I'm standing for bogeys. It's like, no, we need you here, buddy.
Exactly.
So it's really the question of, the idea of like, okay, you want this too much, and you're not willing to serve, because this is, and if it could ever be a vocation for men to, I would love, I don't want to put, you would love for all Catholic parishes across these United States to have men take up that vocation again, of that masculine vocation of defending your church and defending your people. Defending them is giving comfort, giving first aid, giving these other kinds of things as well. That's all part of the action-y part, which all of you want. Yeah, that may happen. But like you said, most of the time it's, you have to give comfort to somebody. And that's part of making sure your place is safe, because if they're hurt, then everybody's watching them, and it's a whole thing. And then the mass is disturbed. I had a guy one time, I was at a mass, and I think the people, it was a mass, it wasn't a part, I was visiting it, but apparently the guy was having like a heart attack, and he had people, he refused. Big props to this guy. He didn't want to move. Somebody came down and gave him the Eucharist, and then he left. So big props to him. But he's like, it's like if this is happening, I'm getting it right now. Speed, can I get a speed lane? But anytime you can speak to this, anytime somebody faints or anytime something happens, the peace of the mass is disturbed. That safety is disturbed, and that's why we must emphasize all aspects of security.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, that's, again, I always love our parishioners, because they know to I can say this for my parish, they know to kind of stay out of our way.
Yeah.
They know that, hey, these guys are trained. We meet, at least once, twice a year, and we train on things. We know our AED batteries are constantly getting replaced. We make sure our diabetic supply of juice and then our locker is always there. Like, they know that if somebody faints, and that's something we have a lot of. We have some type 1 diabetes people. We have several of them at our church, and things have happened with those. And every time it's happened, everybody just stays super calm. They stay out of our way. They let us handle everything. They have confidence. Like, they have confidence knowing that we're going to get the job done. And if we get hung up on something, we're going to ask for help. And again, that just goes again, if you want the support of your pastor, you have to show them, you know, we want to have a plan for everything. It's not just that worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Your pastor has to make sure he's going to want to make sure that you guys are taking this dead serious with regards to other incidents as well. And like I said, we've trained for that worst case scenario. But again, most of the things I deal with is what we've just been talking about just recently, and he wants to know that he can trust you. Because again, if something goes bad, ultimately his head is on the line.
Yeah.
If the people handle this with chaos and guns ablaze and everything, I mean that's going to look really bad on his part. And so I think there is a place. I always try to see the best in things and why a pastor wouldn't want a safety team, and I get it. I do get it. In this age that you just want to call the police. Well, I'll tell you this. My front street neighbor, the guy, he lives directly across the street, is a SWAT officer, highly trained individual. I have a municipal building with police officers that come on and off shift, 6 houses down from me in the middle of my neighborhood. I'm going to handle something. I'm not going to call my buddy across the street if somebody breaks into my home. I'm handling it. Then I'll call the proper authorities. Or my wife knows, hey, if something happens and I hear something at a certain point, I'm going to pick up the phone, call 911. But I'm going to handle that deal. And I think that's something we all need to do for our parishes is if you want to be successful in getting a safety team started, is you need to, and I've told people this, contact me. I have our whole entire existence is on a PDF form for our team. It was put together by a police officer. He's retired now, but he put together the whole entire thing, and it has everything that we're supposed to do in it. And we live and die by what is in that document. And I think our pastors have hands down, they have put their full trust in us because they know that we can be trusted. We're just dads that just want to do the right thing. And I will say this, it is hard. It's hard to recruit for a safety team. You think that, it's an easy thing to do. It's not. We have to hold, for our team, it's the same guys on duty almost every single Sunday.
Yep.
It is not easy finding men that are willing to, let's look at the worst case scenario. If that happens, let's really think about it. If you're having to conceal carry, so what you have on you to defend yourself and your parish is going to be very limited in scope. What you're going to be matched up against, whether it's one guy or multiple guys, they're not going to have small weapons. You're going to be outgunned.
Yep. Because you have
to accept that. You're going to have to accept that.
Yeah, just real quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but I try to tell people, you have to understand that when whoever it is, whether it's a robbery of your home, your car, your vehicle, or church, these people have planned, prepped, and they have committed. That's the thing that they have committed. Their rationale, that's already gone. And we are limited. I always joke because I have a little LCP max. And being a little wider around the waist, that's kind of the only thing I can kind of conceal well. And I kind of joke with people like, guys, my LCP max is no match for a guy who's kitted out and ready for action. That's so right. If we can not avoid that, I would love to be able to carry my Ruger RXM wherever I go. And yes, it is open carry in the state, but that's a different. We can get into that discussion if you want. But and I tell people, listen, as a concealed carrier, as a person who carries a firearm, as a member of a safety team, you need to make sure you are professional. You got to bend over backwards to make the public safe, because most of the public won't agree with your reasons for it. And you can't be the example that they use to say you shouldn't have guns. Because I ran into that one guy who carried a gun and he was a jerk about it, and he was arrogant and he was disrespectful. And now I have to explain to my in-laws at Thanksgiving, hey, did you hear about that one guy? And it's, well, no, he's not supposed to do this. He's not supposed to do that. He's not supposed to. I have to do more work because your pride got in the way of, it's my right under this Texas Penal Code. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your vast knowledge of the concealed carry laws. They're uncomfortable, and people's feelings are the ones that dominate that. So you you have to be careful. And really, this whole thing was about, you're not going to be able, like Joe said, to have like a shotgun. You're not going to be able to have a Mossberg at the ready to do things. So
Yeah.
continue.
That's yeah, no, that's and that's something I do every Sunday before I get on duty. Is I say a quick prayer,
Yep.
and just I've accepted the fact that if that ever happens, I'm probably not going to come out of there. I'm not going to come out of there on my feet. You
Nope.
know, fortunately, I've been blessed with very good instincts. I can sniff things out when I don't know, just I have really good instincts, and there's been times where I've like get a strange feeling, and I'm usually dead on the money. When something
Yep.
weird is happening, I'm usually dead on the money about it. And like I said, you have to accept that, and then I think there needs to be more. A pastor will be willing to resist one or two guys, maybe three or four guys coming to him, but if you have a large group of men that are like, we need this, I think you're going to have a much better chance of success doing that. And he needs to see a concerted group effort by the group to come together and put something together that's going to work, that's going to be cohesive, and something that's going to be, not militaristic, not, walking around with, 10 magazines on you,
The
he
pictures of the
doesn't want
guys
that.
with 5 guns on them all over the
Yeah,
place in the
yeah, having
Walmart.
tactical vests on, having kits on. He doesn't want that. He
Nope.
just wants professional men, dads who are just looking to protect their family. And like I said, at the end of the day, if that worst case scenario happens, you got to remember. I did a talk for our parish on the cycles of a terrorist attack. Like there is a whole cycle that they will go through. Leading up to an attack. Like they're going to handpick you. There's going to be the initial surveillance. They're going to come into your church. They're going to look for areas of vulnerability. They're going to narrow down. Okay, they may have you and two or three other sites picked out, and then they're going to narrow down based on the ease
Yep.
of the mission. Like, okay, this one's going to be easy. And then they're going to do their pre-attack surveillance on you. These people are going to be in and about your parish or wherever it is that you're at, be a mall or wherever. This doesn't have to just be a parish situation. This could be at a mall, wherever. And then they're going to do rehearsals. They're going to do a rehearsal. Go to the range or whatever, and then they're going to execute the mission. Then afterwards, they're going to either go down or escape and then exploit. Putting stuff online, live streaming. Stuff like that. Nowadays, it's become a popular thing to live stream their attacks. These attacks on people. And these are all things that you have to really prepare. Like these people are like, they mean business. So you're going to be at a disadvantage if you're in this position. You're going to be at a disadvantage, and it's going to be bad enough if there's one guy. If there's multiple shooters, you're going to be really feeling it hard. But these are just things you have to accept. But again, if you can get together a large group of men, a large group of concerned fathers that are like, hey, I will perform CPR if somebody has an attack. I will put a tourniquet if somebody, shattered glass and somebody has a huge lacerations. I'm willing to get blood on me and apply a tourniquet to try to save their life. That's what they want to hear. And so
I think it's a great point that you said that you need a group that presents a professional plan, and I have a link to his Twitter page or his X account in the description box down below. If you are not, I suggest you go follow him and message and reach out to him if you have any additional questions on that. But and I'm expanding this outside of Texas. Let's just say to the normies, the Novus Ordo. I'm not trying to get anybody fired up. It's just the majority of masses that most men are going to be at. Let's put all the cards on the table. Those are going to be run by older boomer women who are going to be hugely resistant to any mention of anything. And the priest is going to listen to them because they're the ones that pretty much run the church for him on a day-to-day operation. So you need to come prepared to resist that, and to overcome their fears, and even for their objections. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this thing I heard from Rachel Maddow? And what about all these other things? You're going to have to be prepared to work through the objections in your own parish, because, we love our brothers and sisters in Christ, but a lot of them, the general public, and once again, I'm not trying to light fires under any, a lot of male households, a lot of Catholic households, the order is reversed. A lot of women are running those households. And so that's why I even started the Armed Papists, is to tell men, hey, we have the Council of Trent, the first council that said self-defense is okay. And you can look all this stuff at thearmedpapist.com. Pope Pius X, St. John Paul II wrote a huge encyclical on how it's men's grave duty to protect their families. So this idea, because really I got the idea of the Armed Papists when I just heard bishop after bishop after bishop saying, give up your guns. We should be in a gun-free society. Guns are bad. Gun control, because the USCCB claims to be not political, but every 4 years they always tend to talk about how gun violence is a major cause of death. And I was just being a gun guy, and I'm sure you've run into it at gun ranges, when you tell people you're a Catholic, our Protestant brothers and sisters are like, you guys are anti-gun. And it's like, no, we're not. No, we're not. Look at all the stuff that we can do. Look at the Vendée. We have a history. The Cristeros, we get to action when it happens. Yep. And there's a lot of Catholic men, and it's not their fault. It's just society in general. Maybe they're not as catechized as they go, or all these other kinds of things. You know, they need to know, hey, it's your responsibility whether you like it or not. And you may have to talk to your wife about that and be like, listen, honey, and now I'm talking about outside of the church as well, Joe, like your home, right? You want to be the priest, prophet, and king of your home. That's part of the priest, prophet, and king. That's so right. There's that. I want to get to a question here, because they're better than listening to me yabber all night. So from D's Knives, great name, by the way.
Yeah, great name.
By the way, excellent name. Are the teams self-funded? Let's just say the teams that you've met across the union.
So most of the teams that I have helped set up, a lot of them are self-funded. So I know I buy my own radio, my own earpieces. The parish provides the batteries for those, hey, Father, we need some more juices for the locker. But a lot of it is volunteer people. Our team is comprised of, so a little into how our team is set up. So we have our safety team and ushers are underneath one umbrella, but we're two separate entities. And so our safety team guys have to be willing to do the jobs and the responsibilities of the ushers. The ushers do not have to do the responsibilities and the actions of the safety team if they're not comfortable with it. So that's kind of a cool dynamic we have we're underneath one umbrella, one leader, and then we have myself underneath that guy, underneath him, and then our head usher underneath our head of safety. And I'm mentioning his name just because out of his privacy, but yeah. He's that's how we have our setup. But a lot of them, like, we have doctors that are not on the team, but they approach the team like, hey, I'm Dr. So-and-so, I'm going to be at this mass. I'm going to be sitting up on this pew on this side, on the St. Joseph side, the Mary side. So if anything happens, just, and we know them, like we've got to know them by face. And when they come in, like, oh, Dr. So-and-so is here, they're sitting on the Mary side, 7 rows from the back, and they're more than willing to help out. We have nurses that are on the team, and they'll just bring in juice. Diana, a real good friend of mine, she'll bring in juices. Hey, I saw the locker was low on juices. I brought some apple juices for you guys in case there's a diabetes incident. She's also in the choir. Hey, she hears something on the radio, somebody fainted, she's on her way down. She's gonna come and she's gonna come and help. And so it's as our team has grown, it's just the cohesiveness, the amount of people that are involved with us, maybe not directly, but indirectly, they're just kind of on standby. I think that really just, again, it just helps strengthen our position, and it helps, support our mission, because our parishioners do believe in what we do, because they want, hey, if you need help, I'm here. I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a whatever, I'm a medical assistant, they all have training, and so that's really been a big deal. And I'll go back to what you were saying about the men, yeah, it's really hard. Well, my wife this, my wife that, I'm like, are you not the man of your house? you are the high priest of the domestic church, right? You have a responsibility. What you say goes, and I don't know how any wife would balk at her husband wanting to defend their family. I have a special needs baby, a 5-year-old, a 7, and a 9-year-old. Now, granted, I have an older teenager daughter. She's 18 now, and she helps out. But my wife juggles our special needs little boy, and she never complains about it. She
Yeah.
knows that, hey, Joey he helps out with the safety of the parish, and that means that I'm going to be stuck with the three little ones. She's going to do it, and she's not going to complain about it, because at the end of the day, she knows that if something happens, my husband is going to do everything in his power to protect us.
Mhm.
And that just goes to that dynamic of roles within the church, roles within society. Her job is to be the mother, the nurturer. Well, guess what? That's her time to do that as well. And my time at church, I do volunteer that time to help protect.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a great way to look at that. And when it's kind of funny, the men have established the safety, right? The men in your parish have established the safety, and once that is there and it's set, it's amazing to see how everybody else is willing to contribute, because they see, okay, these men have stepped up, these men are ready. What can I do to help foster that safety? Because once, and it's amazing, you've mentioned a couple women, once the their primary desire is safety, once they feel that, they're more than happy to support and do what they can to help that. And it's amazing to see that. So
Yeah, I I have a team that we help set up, and they have women undercover people on the team. They're on the team, but
Mhm.
their sole role is undercover. And what they do is, criminals, people that are up to no good, youngsters that are up to no good, they tend to let their guard down around women, and so they'll kind of
Tale as old
spout
as
off at the
time,
mouth
man.
a little
Tale as
bit,
old as time.
and they do, and they like how many times I've had, hey man, having the women on our team has been crucial, because there was a case where a guy, they found out a case of abuse
Mhm.
because a kid had let their guard down. They were around a group of women. One of the women was part of that team, and they were able to get that whole situation addressed because of that. And it's just, and that helped out that person at that parish, tremendously. And there's all kinds of these stories that I've heard from around the nation, from different teams that I've helped set up and get them going. And Tom, he traveled around a lot, setting up teams around the nation as well. And it's amazing how much good has been done. I mean, how many lives have been saved because the person that was in diabetic shock. I was recently diagnosed with diabetes. And had to undergo a complete lifestyle change, but how many lives have been saved just through guys reacting and getting help right then and there. That's going back to getting support of your pastors. That's what's going to get the job done. And there has to be a group to out, because I have had, there's one team in particular I'm thinking of on the East Coast that has had so much pushback from exactly the group you talked about, the old boomer ladies at the parish who run the parish. They're constantly in the pastor's office, probably 6-7 hours out of the day. They're in there talking in his office with him, and they have his ear. And this team has just had so much pushback internally. And they've had a couple of wild incidents there in that time, and it still hasn't been quite enough to get that silence. You're going to have to wait it out. Wait for these older people to go away.
Yeah. Well, that kind of seems to be a common theme across multiple areas of the church. But D's Nice has another point he wants to. He's in California, so I want to toss this to you, Joey. If somebody from a blue state is saying, Joey, I want to set up, obviously I live in California, can't have a gun. What are some steps, or what are some things you could recommend that we do in a blue state that can help secure our parish? Because obviously we can't use firearms because of whatever reason, even if our pastor supports it, the state's really restrictive on it. And if we do, we're going to go to prison forever, or whatever the case may be. Your thoughts on that?
I would say if it was me, this is Joey speaking for myself. If it was me, I would still get a group of men together and do what you can do within the confines of the law, And I go back to the martyrs of the church. These people voluntarily were eaten by lions, skinned alive, boiled alive. They died some of the most gruesome deaths. If you're willing to respond and at least give people time to get to safety,
Yep.
or set up a system to block the doors, to lock the doors, use a tactical belt to lock the doors as you see protesters approaching. There's always something you can do. And if you have a group of men that's large enough, and again, in California, more than likely you're going to have to deal with protesters.
Yeah.
Well, those are easy to handle if you have enough guys. Look at the Battle of 300. You have the right formation. You have the right, tools, at your disposal. You can fend off a very large crowd, in a confined space. You can have 100 people. If you have a very small vestibule, guess what? You can defend that with 20, 30 men easily. Yeah. Yep. And it's just about being vigilant and being proactive. If you're vigilant and proactive in your parish, that's going to go a long way. And then also, I think the number one thing that's helped our parish out is that, yes, we don't walk around like, look at us, but we are visible. Mm-hmm. You do see us. We have a dress code that we abide by. We do wear earpieces so we can communicate easier and we don't disturb mass. We can quietly just kind of get on our radio and talk if we need to. We are visible. And if you make your parish a hard target, that's the main goal. You want to make your parish a hard target for that worst case scenario, because what they're looking for, what terrorists are looking for, whether they're foreign terrorists that come into this country or they're domestic terrorists that are in this country, they're looking for an easy target. Yep. Something that's going to put up very little resistance. That's what they're looking for. So guess what? If you have a group of men that are ushers, you can have a large usher group of men, but say, hey, you know what? We're ushers, but hey, if something happens, guess what? We're going to form together and we're going to defend this place and, try to protect, somebody's, you secure the tabernacle and make sure that the hosts are safe. You go and, get the exits and get the people out, or, you can come up with a plan to defend your parish and make it hard to remember. They want an easy target. Yep. So if you make it hard for them, you have a visible presence in the openings of the church, they're going to pass. They're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a phrase I like to use. It's like water. They're just trying to find places to get into.
Yeah, it's going to go to the least resistance.
Yep. So for somebody in California, that's when I say, okay, you can't. Well, maybe you have two guys in the parking lot in cars, making sure, hey, there's a group coming. So maybe let's get to the ushers to the outside of the doors. Yeah. 2 or 3 per door. So like you said, all right, well, there's resistance at every single entrance point. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have a guy walking around outside with a walkie-talkie in their hand, like looking around, somebody walk in and go, hey, you know what? Let's go to the other church down the street. I didn't see anybody outside that one.
Yep.
It's little displays like that, because then at that point, the person's going to go, well, he has a walkie-talkie. I mean, we are in California. He ain't supposed to have a gun. It's going to make them question whether or not the action that they're getting ready to take, if it's really going to be worth it and how much resistance they're going to get. So any sort of visible presence that says, hey, I'm here, I might mean business to you, they're probably going to pass.
Absolutely. So yeah, every no matter Texas or Florida, it doesn't matter the parish, there are always going to be a set of circumstances and challenges that you're going to have to overcome. But they can be overcome with just a little bit of, brainstorming and the will and really the desire to do so. If you have that desire, then you'll be able to. I mean, first of all, I just want to say thank you for spending an hour with me. I don't want to take too much of your time. If there's any kind of closing thoughts you want to wrap up with.
No, I mean, if I can say something for the men out there, take charge of your household. Take charge. Your household is yours. I mean, yes, you work hand in hand with your wife, but do understand that you have a role to play in this society. And as society continues to break down and people become, especially men, become more effeminate, we need to step up as men, and especially you guys that have daughters and sons. My son, my 7-year-old son, when he makes eye contact with me, when he's leaving mass or he's, going to the restroom at mass, the way he looks at me, you can see like, that's my dad. My
Nice.
dad's protecting me, and he's very inquisitive. He asks questions like, so dad, if this ever happened, what would you do? Dad, with this, and this is impressing on I'm imparting knowledge onto him, and he's seeing his dad is just not talking about it. His dad is taking action. He sees his dad doing it. And that's going to impress on him. It's going to make him a stronger young man, and in the future, I'm sure that sometime in the future, he'll end up being on the safety team too. My oldest son, who's 20, he's going to be, he's discerning marriage right now, but once he gets settled into that, if that's what it ends up being, I can pretty sure see him on a safety team here at some point here pretty soon, but, take action, man. We had, just one more little side story, this speaks to what I'm saying here. Is during the lockdowns when the masses were canceled and everything, we organized a big rosary walk. It's supposed to be a men's rosary walk here in Dallas. And the first one, bunch of men. And every subsequent one, it got smaller and smaller. And they were like, okay, start bringing women. Women show up in mass.
Yeah.
Huge crowds for the rosary, mostly women. It's like, guys, come on, what are we doing? What are we doing? And props off to the guy in California, Tradcat Man. I'm not sure which he has. An Instagram.
That's Daniel. Tradcat Man.
He's been doing. Yeah, Daniel. Yes, I think he's a Marine, if I'm not mistaken. He's been doing those since then. And I mean, my hat's off to him. Just getting those men and getting them out there. Those are the kind of men we need in the church. Those are the kind of men that we need out there, promoting stuff, online and getting men engaged because men have become very lazy, very disengaged, and we need to get the men going again.
Yeah. Society has been more than happy through the trappings of comfort and telling men, like, listen, we don't need you. We have this, we have this, we have this. We don't need you in the house. Women can work this. So, you have been told, men, that you are not needed, which is the exact opposite. You are needed. So that's something that, the church needs you, especially men.
Yep.
The church needs you. Hopefully you can take that from this discussion with Joey and I. So like I said, Joey's, his link to his X account is underneath in the description box. If they're like, I don't like X and I don't want to use X, how is there any other way they can contact you?
You know what? I have another email address I'll give out. It's olivojoey74@gmail. Reach out to me on there. Like I said, I've helped set up quite a few teams. I have all the documents from our team, how we set things up here in the state of Texas. Again, these were set up in the state of Texas, but you can use it as a template and then tailor it according to the laws and regulations of whatever state you live in. And it's pretty detailed. We have a basic form, and we also have a very detailed PDF on that, and they can take that and run with it and use that as a template to start their teams up.
Awesome. And if you know some men that are in your church and you're kind of bringing this up and they're kind of giving you resistance, I don't know if the church allows it. Please grab my book, The Armed Catholic, The Catholic Case for Guns and Self-Defense, guys. I run through the modern church's Catholic argument against guns, and then I use 2,000 years of tradition to dismantle that argument. It's been double-checked by Jonathan Arrington and some other, really brilliant minds to make sure I haven't led anybody astray, and they've given me the thumbs up on it. It's at Barnes & Noble. If you'd like, I can send you the link because Amazon's giving me a bunch of nonsense. So it'll be most helpful. If you want, grab it there. It's a great book to kind of just introduce the idea of self-defense is a Catholic value. It's a virtue that you can use, protection, and so forth. Joey, I want to thank you once again for taking as much time as you had with me. Thank everybody for hanging out with us. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.
Viva Cristo Rey.